Hi guys, it's Kathy Bowl, Chair of Disability Labor, and in this video today I want to outline the types of things that the Executive Committee does and to give you some highlights of, how we do that, what we do, how many meetings, and so on, so you can make a decision as to whether or not you would like to put yourself forward to be on the exec. So the first thing is the role I have now, which is co-chair of disability labor. I have done a lot of different things in my time with disability labor. I've done some secretarial stuff. I've done treasurer stuff. I've done IT stuff. I've done quite a bit of different things within the executive. And I think that's the biggest thing I have to stress to people is if you're putting yourself forward for the executive, you need to be able to meet virtually, help form work parties, and enable us to share out some of the work that we'd like to do. When we started back in 2018 with the new style executive, we had signed up for 12 principles. I think there was all but one that we haven't done. So I think we were on the right heading, and it kind of told people what we wanted to do. And I'm hoping with the new executive to be able to write up another series of principles and be able to fulfill them for the betterment of our members. So one of the things that I think you may need to know, but you may not have heard of them before, is the Nolan principles. Now what I'll do is I'll just read them off because I've got my cheat sheet here. Number 1 is selflessness. Holders of public office should act solely in terms of the public interest. You should, the next one is integrity. The holders of public office must avoid placing themselves under any obligation to people or organizations that may try inappropriately to influence them in their work. They should not act or take decisions in order to gain financial or other material benefits for themselves, their family, or their friends. They must declare and resolve any interests and relationships. Number 3, objectivity. Holders of public office must act and take decisions impartially, fairly, and on merit, using the best evidence and without discrimination or bias. Number 4 talks about accountability, that holders of public office are accountable to the public for their decisions and actions and must submit themselves to the scrutiny necessary to ensure this. Number 5 is openness. Holders of public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public unless there are clear and lawful reasons for doing so. Honesty. Holders of public office should be, and I don't want you laughing, truthful. And number 7 is leadership. Holders of public office should exhibit these principles in their own behavior. They should actively promote and robustly support these principles and be willing to challenge poor behavior whenever it occurs. Okay, so that's the Nolan principles. And basically that's the same thing that will be required of people who are elected to local authorities and in the Labor Party. We all should aspire to the Nolan principles, and we also should call out really poor behavior. So in that, there's also kind of a disabled elephant in the room, if you will. And that is, despite the fact that we all may despise being called vulnerable, technically by the law, we are all vulnerable on the exec, all 15 of us. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who don't want to be labeled as being vulnerable, and yes, I get it. But the fact of the matter is that we are all vulnerable, and we should have this in the back of our minds when we're addressing one another within the executive meetings. And that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, we've been labeled that way. And until we get to change the laws, we don't have any other way to relate as far as being legally bound to take care of one another when we're on the executive. I just recently stood down as a counselor in my local authority, and the reason I stepped down was because, unfortunately, I was not in a good space to continue running for an office where I felt unsupported by the people I was working with. So that is why I say it's so important that we're kind to one another, because we spend a lot of time chatting and dealing with some things that aren't really nice. And we have to make sure that everybody feels welcome to the meetings. We have had open meetings where there's a first part of the meeting, it may be a confidential section, which may deal with issues of discipline, which by law is something that we need to keep confidential. We feel that we don't want to take the whole thing and post it on Facebook or something like that. That's not being mindful of the stuff around GDPR. Speaking of GDPR, unfortunately, when we started to push to have people fill in a survey to let us know and the party know that we're disabled and how they could provide reasonable adjustments to us when we attend meetings and stuff, unfortunately, that is deemed as very expensive, because when you are registered with the information boards, sorry for that, I sometimes get ahead of myself, but there's in GDPR, you must not store information in certain things like protected characteristics, for instance, or people's medical history, or those kind of things. It costs a lot to be able to get the go-ahead from the Information Commissioner, also referred to as ICO. There's things that we can't actually store, which is one of the reasons why if we do a survey, it is not going to be listed that it's for all disabled people and all CLPs and stuff, because CLPs may not be able to afford the level of protection that you have to pay into in order to be certified as far as GDPR is concerned. The other thing is, I really want people to know that when we have meetings, in the past we've been having 12, I may have mentioned that earlier, the meetings run anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on what information or challenges or discussions we need to have. What we do is we try to break after 45 minutes and then go another 45 minutes and take a break, and if we're still meeting. And that will be the duty of the chair to ensure that you get those breaks, because many of us have difficulty with energy impairment and kind of brain fatigue if you're going on too long. So we make sure we try to get in a break where people can move away from the screens and then come back. The other thing is that during this past year, what I've been trying to do is to get in some regular informal chats so that people can get together and socialize, to get to know each other, to develop some kind of rapport. Now, I know that's hard on Zoom or Teams or whatever internet platform you're using. And the only time is to spend some time in another's company. I know it's not the best, but it's all we have, because I fear that we will still continue to be shielding for some of us for quite a while. And I think we just need to develop some kind of rapport between us. I say us. I don't know who will be on the next executive. I'm just hoping that they make sure, and I'm pretty sure they will, kind of guard against running meetings so long that everybody shuts off after the first hour. I think also you're expected that if you're handed something to do, you're expected to report back. Let us know how things are going. Check in. That's what the executive meetings are for. To yell for help. If you don't think you can continue, it's okay to think that maybe you're not in a good place and that you need to step back. I would rather, and I'm sure that the new executive would rather, that people tell us when they're not well and when they need to step back. You need to do self-care. I think it's really important that people get an idea of what to do to maintain their mental health. And that's what we do sometimes at an informal meeting, where we just talk about stuff. It's not necessarily to talk about anything bad. It's just to talk off topic so that we can get to know each other. It's because we don't meet in person. And I think I need to address that as well. Until we know it's absolutely safe and that we're not putting anybody into jeopardy, we're not going to hold meetings where people can attend in person. In fact, I know that the Labour Party is intending to have conference in Brighton. And they also know how we feel about that from Disability Labor's perspective, because Brighton is absolutely horrendous for accessibility. But we have been talking to the Labour Party at a high level in order to allow disabled people to attend conference in through virtual means. And we're hoping that the party is willing to support us in that. I know that we're planning on doing some stuff for women's conference that comes up. It's the end of June. And that's the reason that we pushed back our AGM. It wasn't just because we wanted to move it. It's because we had planned for the last weekend in June, prior to when women's conference was announced. And we felt we needed to move our AGM back a bit in order to be able to allow the women who want to attend Women's Committee to do so and not spend all day on the last day of conference and then have to get themselves a drink and something to eat and then to launch into our AGM. So we deferred our AGM in order to allow women to be able to participate in both events. So, yeah, we'll probably be using Zoom as a reasonable adjustment. It's the most flexible of platforms. It suits people's disabilities that have been on the executive, and they may need, if they're reelected, and I'm not saying who, but if they need to use Zoom as a reasonable adjustment instead of using Teams, then I would suggest that that's what we do. I'm just going to look at my notes again. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's basically all of the stuff I wanted to say. I'll say again that members of the executive will all have varying disabilities, and those disabilities need to be thought about by every member before you open your mouth, so that what you say doesn't affect somebody else in the meeting. And I believe that although we can have fun, like the thing about truthfulness in politics, which was a joke, that's something that we have to take very seriously. And considering all the complaints on ableism and what trying to point out to the Labor Party that ableism is rife. We need to be pressing on with that and making sure that everybody understands what ableism is and what it does to people. I know that there have been many horror stories about people being treated as second-class citizens because they're disabled and because they don't meet with the behavior that should be exemplary when you're dealing with elections. Public servants know and have drummed into their heads the Nolan principles. And I believe that people in a public office, now I say public office, you can replace the words in a public office to in our organization. And when you're representing people from the organization, if you're going to a meeting where you've been asked to attend, you are not attending as yourself, and you have to be able to put aside your own agenda, because this is not about meeting the top people in the party and in government. This is about trying to get wins for disabled people who are aligned to the Labor Party. And I still believe that the Labor Party is the best way. It's the place that represents the working people. And I still believe that. And I hope you do too. And I hope to see you on the exec, whether I'm in the exec or not. I will still be a member of Disability Labor, and I will be out there if somebody needs to talk to me to find out something about the executive that they don't know. If you want to run for the executive, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss it with you. And have a really good day after watching this. I know it's long and wordy, and I didn't mean it to be, but I wanted to give you some flavor of what the executive has and what the executive expects. So the recap quickly is that we try to align ourselves with the Nolan principles. Nobody's disability out trumps anyone else's. I don't play top trumps with disability. Some things need to remain private and will not be blasted across Facebook pages and stuff. I'm sorry, but where there's a legal obligation to keep confidentiality, we will be doing that. If we have a problem where we're not dealing with data in an appropriate fashion and it gets pointed out to us, we will refer ourselves to the Information Commissioner's office. We expect people to treat people with respect, that we expect people to adhere to confidentiality, especially during the bit of the session that is labeled as confidential. We don't always discuss confidential stuff, but we will report back on what's in the confidential bit of the meeting so that people will be aware that we're dealing with something. And I hope that this coming executive takes the organization even further in supporting disabled people. And I want to thank you for listening to me waffle on, but I hope that gives you some idea of what you will come to terms with or be witness to if you're elected to the executive of disability labor. So have a good day. If you have any problems with filling out your statement, or there's issues that you need to have somebody help you with, we're currently recruiting volunteers, not those exec members who are actually running again for the executive committee, because that wouldn't be appropriate. But feel free to reach out. We will pass it to people who can help you. And yeah, have a great day. Thanks.